Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics, and in this video I'd like to go over a little roundup of the political news stories which were remarkable, but maybe not to the extent they warrant an entire video of their own. From Lee Anderson wanting to grow and farm coal, to Rishi Sunak abandoning what was left of his dignity and agreeing to act as Jacob Rees-Mogg's understudy on GB News, to Nadine Dorries flying into a jealous rage between Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson. But first, if you'd like to be notified of daily news and politics, please subscribe to the channel. So, it's been quite a week, and despite what I would describe as a major misstep by Labour, the Tories are still touring in their clown cars. Nothing Labour have done this week is going to hurt them in the slightest, because the Tories have been embarrassing themselves on a daily basis, on an almost hourly basis. Let us begin with Lee Anderson, suggesting that coal is a renewable form of energy. He said that because coal was formed from trees, and you can grow trees, that coal was sustainable. Seemingly oblivious, of course, to the fact that hundreds of millions of years ago, animals had only just started to explore the land. The planet was basically covered in vegetation. And that we've basically consumed much of the coal that took hundreds of millions of years in a few hundred years. Like, if it takes that long to produce something which you use in like a few centuries, it's not really sustainable, is it? And sometimes when a politician or other random grifter makes such a scientifically illiterate statement, you're not always sure if they're just thick or they understand the situation themselves, but they're preying on followers who they know are ignorant or thick themselves. In Anderson's case, I mean, he's a former miner. Okay, being a miner, you don't have to know how coal is formed, but I'm quite sure someone who's been in mining for some years will have had a conversation about it at some point in their career. So I'm assuming on this occasion, he just thinks his own supporters are ignorant and gullible. And it wasn't Lee Anderson's only embarrassing little moment this week either. So at the PopCon Looney convention that he was speaking at, he praised Holly Valance for saying that left-wing ideas are crap. Easy to say when you're married to a billionaire, isn't it? But things took an interesting turn when said billionaire, Nick Candy, who was present at the PopCon himself, announced yesterday that we should have a Labour government. Cannot tell you how hilarious it is that this committed Tory donor, not a particularly nice man either, but this committed Tory donor went to listen to speeches about the future of conservatism led by Liz Truss, Jacob Rees-Mogg and Lee Anderson, and concluded, yeah, we should have a Labour government. If this is the future of the Conservatives, we need a Labour government. Absolutely hilarious. Mind you, this was all minor compared with the week Laura Trott had. She is the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, the second most senior politician in charge of our economy. It was being pointed out to her that she was breaking her government's own fiscal rules by implementing the tax cuts this year. But they're unfunded tax cuts, they can't afford them, right? They're doing it anyway as a pre-election bribe. The Tories have decided that one of their fiscal rules to recover from Liz Truss, they rejigged the fiscal rules and said, look, we're going to make sure that debt falls as a share of GDP over 5 years. But the current forecast shows it's rising. In fact, Rishi Sunak has been trying to say that debt's falling for a little while. And I think it's the Institute for Fiscal Studies that keeps rapping him over it. So this interviewer pointed out that with the latest data, it was out this week, that although debt as a share of GDP is forecast to fall in the fifth year compared to the fourth, it will still be higher than now. And Trott just couldn't get it. She was like, oh yeah, but it's going to fall. Oh yeah, it's going to fall. It's going to fall as a share of GDP. It's like, no, it's not. It's rising as a share of GDP. No, but it's falling as a share of GDP, she was saying. Do you know what? I can't adequately explain just how bad she was. You're going to have to listen to it.
What is puzzling me is how you can be even talking about tax cuts when a central pledge is getting debt down and debt is going up.
So the central pledge is one of our fiscal rules, which is that debt needs to be falling over the 5-year fiscal forecast as a percentage of GDP, which it is.
No, it's higher in 5 years than now.
Not as a percentage of GDP.
Yeah, no, it's higher. It's going up. It's lower in the fifth year relative to the fourth year. So it goes down at the end of the projection. But in 5 years, I think it's higher at the end of the project. Yeah, 23.4, 89% of GDP. 28.9, it's 93% of GDP. Debt goes up. It falls at the end of 5 years a little bit. But that doesn't mean debt is coming down. That means debt is going up. It's higher. It's higher in 5 years than now.
It's falling as a percentage of GDP.
No, it's higher as a percentage of GDP.
I'm not sure. I think...
Well, this is really basic. I'm looking at the latest OBR table. Public sector net debt ex-Bank of England, 28.9, 92.8%, 23.4, 89%. So it's up in 5 years. Now, I'm amazed that you don't know that debt is rising, but you're the one who's planning... I'm looking at the percentage of GDP.
This is... I think I need to have the figures. I've got different figures, so I think we just need to...
Not kidding. This is someone who attends cabinet and manages the government's budget. She hasn't got a clue and has now been exposed as having no idea how her own fiscal rules even work. In fact, she doesn't even understand basic economic metrics. But what you can take from this, aside from the fact that the people in charge of our economy are utterly incompetent, is that the Tories are breaking their own fiscal rules. Whatever the arguments against Labour's announcement yesterday, and there are plenty, it was motivated by an awareness that a Labour government must stick to fiscal rules or the media will be all over it. Even now, the state of the economy right now, Labour have a slender lead on who would be best to manage the economy over the Conservatives. Even now, the majority of people cannot bring themselves to think of the Conservatives as anything other than the party of the economy. It's madness. It's ingrained. It's like some racial memory in us or something. So Labour must always be whiter than white when it comes to fiscal rules, or the media will murder them for it. Here we've got a Tory government being exposed breaking fiscal rules, and it's crickets and tumbleweed from most of our media. No calls for her to resign, no outrage at this in the media, no nothing. But what about our glorious leader? Surely Rishi Sunak, chastened by his cock-up on Wednesday, decided to focus a bit more carefully for a few days on not making any more embarrassing statements. No, not a bit of it. After the reports this week of a new NHS dentist opening up and hundreds of people queuing to try to get registered, Rishi Sunak attempted to distract from the shocking state of dentistry in this country by visiting a different dentist. As if to say, OK, look, there might be problems in pockets of the country, but there's lots of places really well served. So he visits this dentist in Cornwall and claimed, oh, this dentist is working to tackle the crisis in dentistry. The journalist did their homework and reported, actually, this dentist isn't accepting any adult NHS patients. Bit of a blunder. Sunak's response, apparently to say, oh, no, it's deliberate. What? So in order to counter this story about a lack of NHS dental services in the country, Rishi Sunak deliberately visited a dentist which is not accepting any new adult NHS patients. What? So he was trying to highlight how badly his government have run down healthcare services. How does that make sense? In fact, it makes him look more idiotic to deliberately point out how badly served the public are by his government than to have done it accidentally. And Sunak hadn't even finished. It was revealed that Rishi Sunak will be taking part in a Q&A amongst various gammons at GB News next week. Only it gets worse. So Jacob Rees-Mogg presented it as Sunak is covering for his slot on the channel. In fact, Moggy actually said the PM will be filling in for him. So Rishi Sunak has now sunk so low that he's filling in for Jacob Rees-Mogg. He's allowing himself to be paraded around as Jacob Rees-Mogg's understudy. To say nothing of the fact that the way this has been done may be illegal. Not that Ofcom care. This week they confirmed that GB News are fine to spread deliberate lies, despite the code being quite clearly against this. I just hope when Labour come in, they beef Ofcom up again, let them loose and see what happens. But I think I'm going to give the last word to Nadine Dorries. She's always good for a laugh. As part of Sunak's attempt at a damage limitation exercise this week, he said that he still talks to Boris Johnson. He said he talked to him at the end of last year, and he would be absolutely be open to him returning to government. I'm sure that would be no problem. As Johnson reckons he's an election winning machine, he can just stand in a by-election and re-enter Parliament. We've got lots of by-elections going on right now. I mean, you wouldn't bring him back via the House of Lords like David Cameron, would you? Because that would be ridiculous. That would be an admission that he can't get elected to the House of Commons. But Nads absolutely raged at the suggestion. This is a lie, she said. They never speak. How does she know? Does she regularly talk to Johnson herself and every time she visits says, now, you're not talking to Rishi behind my back, are you? No, of course not, dear. I would never talk to Rishi without telling you first. What an extraordinary reaction. My Boris doesn't talk to Rishi. He wouldn't. He wouldn't betray me like this. Also, buy my book. She's a proper bunny boiler these days. If Johnson does still see her, he wants to watch out, and so does Dylan the dog. So that, anyway, is some of the little tidbits which popped up this week, which you may have missed. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, please click the like button. If you'd like to support the channel further, the join button for memberships. And until next time, I'll see you later.